In 2018, Donald Trump passed a series of sanctions and tariffs against China with one goal in mind: stop China's rise. But what happened next is truly remarkable. China used each and every tariff as an opportunity to advance every industry Donald Trump targeted. When the US attacked China's agriculture, the plan backfired to hurt US farmers more, as China simply purchased soybeans from Brazil instead. When Trump targeted China's steel production, it resulted in China making a technological breakthrough that revolutionized the entire industry. And when the US tried to stop Huawei, China's largest and most successful tech company, Huawei not only survived, but responded with the fastest growth in 4 years. And now, with China's launch of DeepSeek R1, the entire game has changed. This better performing, open source AI model has eliminated the last illusion that tariffs on China could ever work. Show me one industry where tariffs have achieved their intended goal of containing China. You can't. And yet, crazily enough, we're still seeing the same playbook. President Trump called tariffs, quote, the most beautiful words in the dictionary, signaling we're going straight back to his favorite tool from his first administration. But this time is different. China's trade surplus with the world has reached nearly $1 trillion, with $280 billion of that coming from the United States alone. This has put China in a position that many analysts believe makes it better prepared than ever for a trade war with the US. But to prove exactly how tariffs have spurred Chinese innovation and made the country stronger, I want you to listen to this clip from David Sachs, a close Trump ally and leading voice in America's AI industry.
This is where DeepSeek's innovation is they have managed to get more efficiency out of chips. They're squeezing more juice out of the chips, and they kind of have to because of the export controls, which limited advanced chips going to China. They've had to learn how to be more efficient. So necessity has been the mother of invention for them.
Did you hear those last few words? Necessity's been the mother of invention for them. And this is the primary reason that Trump's tariffs and sanctions against China have never worked. Tariffs simply force China to work harder and smarter and accomplish more with less. For many years, China was the United States' #1 customer of semiconductors. In fact, in 2023, China imported a total of $349 billion worth of microchips, which was even higher than the $337 billion China spent on importing crude oil that year. But instead of allowing American companies like Intel to profit from robust trade with China, the US government destroyed this source of revenue, which resulted in Intel becoming the worst performing stock in the S&P 500 last year, as Intel's shares dropped 60% as the semiconductor pioneer struggled to adapt to a shifting landscape. Meanwhile, Trump's cabinet includes an unprecedented 13 billionaires, making it the wealthiest administration in history. Led by former hedge fund manager and now Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, this wealthy team believes that they can cut taxes as much as possible and have tariffs make up the lost revenue. Just listen to these comments to see how far from reality Trump and his team are talking about tariffs.
As I said in my speech last week, instead of taxing our citizens to enrich foreign nations, we should be tariffing and taxing foreign nations to enrich our citizens. Does that make sense, right?
It actually doesn't make sense at all, because that's not how tariffs work. Tariffs are simply taxes. Taxing trade will mean less trade and higher prices for everyone, most especially American consumers. But it seems that Trump is willing to do whatever it takes to stop China's growth, even if it means hurting the US economy. I guess that's what happens when China launches the most advanced open AI tool that rattled Wall Street and wiped away $1 trillion from the stock market in a single day. But there is a much bigger story going on here, as we now have legacy media companies like the Financial Times publishing articles that Donald Trump and his team could have never imagined. With DeepSeek, China innovates and the US imitates. I'm going to break down this article and show you exactly how China's tech scene is preparing for the future. But first, give me 60 seconds of your time, as I want to tell you about today's video sponsor, Nomad Capitalist, which ties directly into the geopolitical trends that I discuss every day on this channel. Last September, I flew to Malaysia and met their founder, Andrew Henderson, at the 2024 Nomad Capitalist Live event in Kuala Lumpur. And it was like hearing a real-life case study of what I discuss on this channel. Andrew started as an entrepreneur, frustrated by huge tax bills, even when he was operating globally. But instead of accepting the status quo, he built a framework for legally reducing taxes, gaining second citizenships, and investing in countries that actually want your business. He turned that experience into Nomad Capitalist, a company that helps you create a customized global plan no matter where you start from. They understand that if you're following geopolitical trends, like the ones I cover here, that you know you need a plan B, a way to protect your wealth if one jurisdiction changes its policies overnight. I mean, you honestly can't get a better example of this than Donald Trump threatening 25% tariffs on two of America's closest allies, Canada and Mexico. If you're tired of feeling stuck, or worried about what your home country might do next, reach out to Nomad Capitalists. Let them help you take advantage of the opportunities that come from thinking globally, not locally. It's exactly what we talk about here, seeing the world as it is and positioning yourself to thrive in it. With Nomad Capitalist, you aren't just getting a piece of the puzzle, like an offshore bank account or a passport. You're getting a full holistic approach. If you are interested in safeguarding your finances and preparing for an unpredictable world that we now live in, simply visit nomadcapitalist.com. I'll drop the link down in the description for you below. But now let me explain exactly how China rose so quickly and why most Americans fail to see this coming. Just listen to this amazing insight from that very Financial Times article, which tells the truth about China. The stereotypical image of China abroad may still be that of a state-subsidized, capital-intensive manufacturing economy that excels at churning out impressive low-cost hardware, such as smartphones, solar panels, and electric vehicles. But in truth, China long ago emerged as a global software superpower, outstripping the West in e-commerce and digital finance services, and it has invested massively in AI too. You see, the United States has an arrogance problem. Many tech executives think that only Silicon Valley can produce the world's best technology, and that sanctions and tariffs will actually stop China's rise. To show you exactly what I mean, watch this unbelievable clip from Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. This clip is the most important part of today's video, so watch it closely as Sam Altman is attending a tech event in India and is asked a simple question from an Indian entrepreneur about starting an AI company.
Where is it that a team from India, three super smart engineers with, not 100 million, but let's say 10 million, could actually build something truly substantial?
Look, the way this works is we're going to tell you it's totally hopeless to compete with us on training foundation models. You shouldn't try, and it's your job to try anyway. And I believe both of those things. I think it is pretty hopeless, but
you honestly can't make up how ridiculous this response from Sam Altman is. Honestly, I've never seen this level of arrogance on display, but it's exactly why so many people in the United States fail to understand the rise of China. Altman literally laughed at this Indian entrepreneur's face and arrogantly proclaimed, "It's totally hopeless to compete with us. You can try, but you'll never succeed because we're better than you." This clip from Sam Altman will go down in history as one of the worst comments of all time in American tech. Instead of India, it was China. And instead of $100 million, China built DeepSeek AI with a budget of only $6 million. But remember what David Sacks said earlier, necessity is the mother of invention. With DeepSeek being open source and proving that top-tier models can be built with relatively small budgets, the playing field has been almost completely leveled. And if anyone has dominance in the space right now, it's China. But once again, this story goes much, much deeper. Check out this tweet from Didi, one of Silicon Valley's top venture capitalists, who explains that China's only good AI model is not just DeepSeek. There are 10 top-tier models all trained from scratch, equal to or better than Europe's top model Mistral, while the US has only 5 labs. The AI race is very much on. What's most interesting here is that the future of AI might not be the United States versus China. It could possibly be Beijing versus Shanghai versus Guangzhou, as so many Chinese companies are competing against each other domestically, quickly raising the bar of innovation in China. Just a few days after DeepSeek launched its R1 platform, Alibaba responded with their own AI tool called Qwen 2.5 that ranks even higher than DeepSeek's model. This is actually very common in China's tech scene. Domestic competition spurs innovation. We've seen this firsthand in China's EV industry, as hundreds of Chinese companies compete against each other domestically, with only the best companies surviving. Once again, this is another massive point the United States continues to miss. Competition is what breeds innovation, not sanctions and not tariffs. Frankly, it's been hard to keep up with the amount of tech breakthroughs China has achieved in the first month of 2025 alone. The floodgates have truly opened. The year started off with a mass migration of users from TikTok to the Chinese app Xiaohongshu in response to the US government's ban of TikTok. This resulted in a huge soft power victory for China, allowing millions of Americans to see the truth about China and realize the US government has been spreading anti-China propaganda for years. DeepSeek has fundamentally changed the AI landscape and exposed how massively inflated the stock market is, and in the past few weeks, China has unveiled 2 more game-changing pieces of technology. In yet another field where the United States was thought to have an incredible lead, Chinese scientists have made a massive milestone in the race to create the world's first fusion reactor. Think of this as a nuclear power plant, but instead of splitting atoms to create energy, these new reactors fuse atoms together, exactly the same way our sun creates energy. When this technology is fully realized, it will offer essentially unlimited clean energy. This past week, Chinese scientists took us one step closer to this future by generating a steady loop of plasma for a record-shattering 17 minutes. But China wasn't finished. 1 week later, a Chinese company in direct competition with Elon Musk's Starlink revolutionized the low-orbit satellite industry. They've created a satellite that achieved a record data transmission rate of 100 gigabytes per second using a laser. To put this in perspective, that's equivalent to transmitting 10 full-length movies in just 1 second. This is 10 times faster than Elon's Starlink and puts China in a position to deliver lightning-fast 6G connectivity to even the most remote locations in the world. As I often say on this channel, we need to study China because the Chinese are inventing the technologies that will shape the future of our world. But instead of celebrating these incredible accomplishments, Washington, D.C. has been sent into full panic mode. Melanie Hart, the senior director of the Atlantic Council's Global China Hub, is now advocating for the US to steal China's best AI talent to keep pace with China. It's quite the bold statement to make, but also shows how disconnected from reality some of our leaders in Washington, D.C. are about China. The truth is the exact opposite is happening. Chinese scientists are leaving top US universities to take up high-profile roles in China, boosting Beijing in its race for global talent. This is the result of years of racial profiling and mistreatment from the US government towards Chinese scientists. But when we start to do some research about the rise of China's tech industry, you'll quickly discover that academic research and recruiting the best talent in the world is exactly how China is closing the technology gap with the United States. Just look at this ranking from the Nature Index, which shows the top 10 academic institutions for academic research. Harvard University occupies the top position in the world, but Chinese universities make up the next 8 spots on this list. But pay attention to the last column of the graph, which shows the growth percentage of each university's academic research. Every Chinese university is expanding and growing, while Harvard University is actually in decline. While the opinion of American military think tanks and tech billionaires remains stuck in a hyper-competitive, antagonistic relationship with China, we're seeing a surprising shift in policy from the Trump administration. Let's not forget that during his campaign for presidency, Donald Trump promised American voters that he would slap 60% tariffs on all goods from China. Those tariffs passed earlier this week and were dropped to a much more reasonable 10%. Donald Trump's cabinet is now realizing how damaging 60% tariffs would be to the US economy and had to immediately pivot to a new strategy. In a move that no one could have predicted, Trump has instead targeted Taiwan's semiconductor industry with high tariffs in an attempt to get them to relocate to the United States. Trump has also questioned the aid that the US government is giving to the island and even snubbed the Taiwanese delegation that traveled all the way to Washington, D.C. to attend his inauguration ceremony. This was a massive loss of face for the Taiwanese delegation, but you know who was in attendance and given top priority to attend? China's Vice President, Han Zheng, pictured here with Vice President J.D. Vance, just ahead of Trump's inauguration. This has all culminated in one of the most shocking clips of the year, and potentially the biggest change in US-China policy in decades. Trump's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who has been notoriously one of the largest China hawks in Washington, finally admitted that the unipolar world, where the United States is the only dominant force, is officially over.
So it's not normal for the world to simply have a unipolar power. That was an anomaly. It was the product of the end of the Cold War. But eventually you were going to reach back to a point where you had a multipolar world, great powers in different parts of the planet. We face that now with China and to some extent, Russia. And then you have rogue states like Iran and North Korea you have to deal with. So now more than ever, we need to remember that foreign policy should always be about furthering the national interest of the United States and doing so to the extent possible, avoiding war and armed conflict.
The Trump administration after spending years ramping up tensions, is now the first in decades to publicly acknowledge multipolarity. With Marco Rubio's stunning comments, we are seeing a shift away from the reckless neoconservative strategy that has defined U.S. foreign policy for the past 20 years. Washington's leading China hawks, the very people who push for economic and military containment, are now being forced to admit reality. China's dominance is undeniable, and competing through hostility is no longer an option. Does this mark a genuine change in American policy? Or is this just political theater? With Trump, it's impossible to say. His cabinet is packed with billionaires and protectionist hardliners who still want to weaponize tariffs. Yet, he has also walked back the most extreme measures and appears open to negotiate with the Chinese government. The real question is whether this pivot towards pragmatism is a long-term strategy or just another short-term maneuver. Regardless of what happens next, one thing is clear. America's attempts to contain China have completely backfired, and the rest of the world has taken notice. From AI to energy to global trade, China is shaping the future while Washington is still trying to rewrite the past. And this is only the beginning. As these developments continue to unfold, the geopolitical landscape is shifting before our eyes. Everyone, thank you for making it to this point in the video. And if you're interested in learning more about China's advanced tech, click here to watch our deep dive video into China's newest space project that will change the entire future of how energy is produced in the world. Trust me, you don't want to miss this amazing report. And as always, I want to thank you for your incredible support, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon.